The Expressway rest stop experience here in Korea goes beyond that of a quick stop to refuel the car, or to run to restroom, or to simply stretch your legs. Indeed, why are foodies seeking out these rest stops? What are some of the other activities available at Korea's rest stops? And in general, how does Korea's transportation system rank? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. An essential part of any road trip here in Korea is a visit to a rest stop, where most agree is the start of the holiday experience. Now, for more on this, I have Jack Barton here in the studio. Jack, hope you had a good Seollal and welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be here again.
I also have Thomas Maresca with us. Thomas, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Right, Jack, we'll start with you then. First of all, a very general question. What do you suppose makes the rest stop, Expressway rest stop experience here in South Korea very unique?
They're extraordinary. My brother was here recently and I pulled off the highway, didn't need any petrol, but I told him, you have to see this. We're going to a service station. He was like, why would you do that? And as soon as we got in there, his jaw hit the floor. There was a jet fighter on a stand, there was a dinosaur park, there was a shopping mall, and everything except, of course, the petrol station, which you can't actually see is hidden down the end. But I think most of all, he was blown out by the food. We walked around for about half an hour, and I think more and more these rest stops are being known for their food. We saw the show The Manager, which actually went on a foodie tour here in Korea, and that has sparked renewed interest in food tours, but even before that. And what's really great about them is you get the regional foods there as well. So you might be going from Seoul to Busan, but as you pull into the hodu-gwajas on the way, you can taste some of the regional food or buy some of the produce. I came home with a jar of hodu-gwaja like this from one of them in the I think it's become something in itself. It's not just somewhere you come in and get petrol. Most people have their favorite stop and they'll go there to get their favorite food or do a bit of shopping, or I don't think there's anything really like it that I've seen anywhere else in the world.
Personally, I love the hodu-gwaja there, the walnut pastries. I love them a lot. Prices have gone up though. I think a pack costs nearly 5,000 won this lunar holiday compared to last year. Do you, Jack, have a favorite snack that you seek out? That's
actually also my wife's favorite snack. So we always have a bag of those and I say, I'm not going to have any. And of course I eat almost the bag. Unfortunately with me, I like the things that most doctors would tell you not to eat. I don't go into the restaurant for the healthy sit-down meals. I like anything on a stick. So whether it be the sodok, the sausage and the rice cake, or the fish cakes, or I love the potatoes, the roast potatoes, any of those foods you see in the little shops open onto the front there, the stalls on the front. I absolutely love them. So yeah, I always go back with a few bags of hot goods for the trip ahead.
Right. And Thomas, aside from the food then, these rest stops here also offer a number of unique activities. Could you tell us a bit about them and also perhaps a bit about the roles that they play at these rest stops? Yeah,
I mean, mentioning the sort of regional foods, there's also sort of some rest stops have taken like regional cultural or other attractions, as part of the experience in Yeoju. I've been to this one which is known for its ceramics, ancient sort of or traditional ceramic production. There's like a big ceramics shop there, just gallery, and they used to give lessons. I'm not sure if they still even actually give ceramics lessons, or sort of natural settings. There's one Kumgang River, which is near Daejeon kind of, and that's like just outside of the rest stop is you can fish on the river. There's like kayaking, things like that. Or there's another well-known one, Dokpyeong, which is kind of southeast of Seoul, and there's actually like a sort of a theme park there with gardens and a nighttime light show. So these have also become sort of attractions in their own right, and you'll see bloggers and sort of mapping services kind of rating them and recommending them. So they're part of that experience as well.
Right, they are. Jack, prior to the pandemic, there were plans actually to further upgrade these rest stops into smart service hubs, so to speak. Could you tell us a bit about this, and what do you suppose are the broader implications of such upgrades?
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas there. I think some of them are really good ideas, some of them not so good, and of the good ideas, it's to really boost the amount of electric vehicle charging stations, but also they were planning to put in 60 hydrogen power stations along the way as well. And you know, right now we're transitioning from people buying electric cars who were just really into electric cars to just normal consumers buying them, thinking, okay, this is the way forward. But everybody complaining at the moment, we need more infrastructure. So that's good. Also, the idea of putting sleep cubicles in, you know, so people can have a rest, break the trip, it's safer. Campgrounds, I'm not so sure, but yeah, there are some really nice scenic gas stops along the way. And then into what I think are the bad ideas. Some might think they're a good idea, and that's drive-through, like smart facilities. So you can call ahead and just pick your food up and drive on. But if you're spending millions of dollars to try and convince people to take a rest and make the road safer and put lay-bys, why are you then spending millions of dollars trying to convince people not to take a rest? You know,
a valid point, actually.
On a 6-hour trip, you know, you need to get out, stretch your legs, wake up a little bit. It makes the road safer. And the other one I really don't like is standardizing basic Korean food. So at least 6 foods they want to begin with, the same ingredients, the same recipes at every single service station. The thing I love about these service stations or rest areas is the diversity of the food, is trying the local specialities. The last thing I want to see in there is kind of like a fast food chain, a standardization of Korean food. So some people might like that if they like uniformity, but for us who want to try the different things around Korea, I would like things to stay as they are, at least with the food.
Right. Thomas, at the height of the pandemic, these rest stops, they also offered COVID-19 testing, right? And there was quite a bit of applause about that.
Yeah,
phrase.
It was a sort of, right, another just kind of convenient and, you know, good idea for using these, you know, frequently trafficked places and allowing, you know, people to get free testing as they were, you know, returning back to Seoul or going to their destinations. And yeah, it was a, you know, part of this really well thought out and well structured rollout of, you know, the COVID response. They definitely played a role in that.
Were you able to try them out though, these screening studies at the rest stops?
Not at the I didn't get tested at a rest stop myself. Yeah.
And Jack, for the sake of comparison, what can you tell us about the rest stop experience in Australia?
Well, it's the exact opposite. Here, you go to a petrol station or service station, but the last thing you can find is the service station. It'll be tucked in the end, hidden away, and there might be 6 pumps, and there's always a queue because there's never enough pumps. In Australia, all you'll really see is the service station. It'll be this huge service station with lots of pumps, probably a third of them being used, and tucked in behind there will be somewhere you can get food, or maybe a fast food, one of the better known chains added on. But mostly it'll just be like a mini mart inside, and you can buy a pie and what we would call chips, or most would call French fries. Very, very different. But Australia's a strange country because if you took Alaska off America, Australia is bigger than America, and yet the overall population is the same as metropolitan Seoul. So we have these very long roads, and you need to pull in and get gas. But at the same time, they have a big negative because they have diverted. The roads used to go through the little towns, and so now they've put their hodu-gwajas or the gas stops on the highways and diverted. It has destroyed the economies in the little towns. So they're convenient, and they're getting bigger and bigger, but it's led to this exodus into the cities again. You go to little towns, more than 60% of the shops are closed. So when I'm actually driving on the highway, I like to go off the highway, fill up at a local petrol station in the town, get some food in the local town, and I actually try to bypass them and just put a little bit of money back into those local economies again.
So you're taking detours then?
Yes, I take detours. It's not a big detour. It's normally like 2 kilometers off the road. They literally just bypass these towns, and it's had this terrible impact on the
I see. And meanwhile, Thomas, over in the US, I understand old-fashioned or no-frill highway rest stops are actually disappearing there. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's been going on for a while. I mean, these are not service centers they don't sell gas and have food. These are kind of built out as the US interstate highway system was being developed in the 50s. And they're really just usually like a restroom and maybe, some picnic tables, but there's sort of like a rustic charm to these places that, some of them are in really beautiful scenic locations. And, they're places where you actually can sort of take a rest versus, filling up or having to do things. But each, they're all maintained by the particular state transportation departments, and there's a financial sort of cost to maintaining them, and so that's more or less why they've been closing them. But there's been some pushback from like truckers, long-haul truckers, where it's not easy for them to pull into these crowded service stations like sort of Jack was describing, that they're also in the US, and they need to take long rests. I mean, like Australia, the US is, massive in the amount of driving that these truck drivers do, or people in recreational vehicles, so there's that side, and there is a little bit of a kind of a local or regional charm that some of these places had that has been disappearing along with this sort of standardization of these, large service centers. And, like Jack was mentioning, there is this whole culture of roadside attractions that you sort of can get off the main highways. And, they still exist in the US, but they're a little bit from this previous generation, like the world's biggest ball of string or the world's largest ketchup bottle, or these like sort of weird, kitschy attractions. I mean, they're a real part of the road culture, but they also are, a little bit harder to find, and I think the rest stops fall under that as well.
Right. Jack, staying with transportation then, let's now move on to the subway system here in Seoul that many foreign media have called one of the best, or is it the best? What are your thoughts? Do you suppose Korea's subway system is the best in the world? And if so, do you care to elaborate a bit?
Yeah, for a non-English speaking country, it's great to navigate. There are other subway systems in the region. I mean, for me, Tokyo, I'm lost after about half an hour. I can't, but the Seoul subway system is just very easy to navigate, which is incredible given how big it is. I think it's about, inner Seoul, the metropolitan's about 300 kilometers, 300 stops, I think around 11 lines now. But if we broaden it out to Incheon, Yongin, all the connections, I think it's over 1,200 kilometers. It's vast. And there are some different operators, and there are some complications when it comes to fares. But overall, the degree to which the interconnection works, you can get multiple apps to figure out how to get on your lines, even apps that tell you which door to stand at, so you know where you're going to make your connection quicker and on time. The cleanliness, the punctuality, the tickets, I'd say, are very reasonable. They're not rock bottom, but it's, even though they're getting a little price boost of about 300 won, I think the first in around 8 years, still very reasonable. So yeah, look, as a foreigner, it's a fantastic system. I think as a Korean, though, it's wonderful. And one of the great reasons, of course, is such a modern system built in the 70s. The other system I love is the London Underground, which is about 150 years old. But you are lucky if your line is running that day. If it is running, it's a miracle if the train doesn't arrive 10 minutes late. And of course, because it was built back then, it's tiny and you have to bend over in the train, and it's hot and it's stuffy, and it's, yeah, so when you compare it, and I do love the system, but the Seoul system is like light to the dark, I think.
Right, and talking about the cold, we have heated seats in the subway as here in Korea, here in Seoul as well. Thomas, the subway system is also known to be very comfortable and very convenient. High marks for that, for those two elements as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to give a shout out to the heated seats on a day like today. I took the subway on the way over here, and it's really just an everyday luxury that I can't overstate. Yeah, I mean, I'm from New York City, and also a really old, vast. I mean, I've spent countless hours on that subway system, so I can see the contrast to here, and just cleanliness. Just service reliability, Wi-Fi. Information is quite accessible. Just the platforms being shielded by the sliding
screen doors
is something that to me was like a revelation. And it's reserved seats for seniors and disabled. A special seat for pregnant women. I mean, just sort of the level of thoughtfulness or civility almost is really striking. And just on a kind of underlying basis of just, clean, easy to access. I mean, it really is such a vast difference to
right, it's clean, it's comfortable, it's convenient. I mean, we'll use an alliteration right there. Jack, a few subway stations here in Seoul are linked to underground shopping malls and even bookstores, including the Express bus terminal station as well as Samsung station. They serve as popular tourist destinations. Did you take your brother there, perhaps, when he was here?
I didn't take him to those ones, but you're right. I mean, those are very popular, especially the Samsung going into the big COEX Starfield library there with the mountains of books, almost like buildings themselves, and that huge the bus terminal. I think it's 800 stalls or something. It's the biggest underground in Seoul. But I took him down to Kyobomungo, the big bookstore, which I love because it has a subway station going straight into it from Gwanghwamun. Of course, we went up to the palace, very close, and he wanted to do dress up. And there's, of course, a subway stop right at the end of the alley where you can put the clothes on. And as you look around Seoul, you'll see most of the big attractions have a subway stop either leading directly into it or right out the front. There's a few strange exceptions, like nearby the Seoul Arts Centre. But I think that comes down to, I'd say, one of the little negatives in the areas that aren't highly populated, because votes might be called in. This is something you get everywhere. You sometimes have clusters of stations, like in Gangnam, perhaps 3 way too close to each other because of political campaigning. And then other areas which are a little sparser, you don't have quite as many stops. But I'd say that's rare. I'm in one of those rare areas where I have to walk 25 minutes, and mostly it services everything. So it's great for tourism, but it's also great for locals. And it's why people use the system, because normally they can go outside, there's a stop within a few hundred meters, and it might even take them directly into their building. So it's even better than going to the car park. Very convenient.
Especially when it's really cold or
Absolutely.
raining.
When it's like today, you want to go straight into the building.
Right, of course. Meanwhile, Thomas, we've been talking about the merits of the subway system here. Now, is there a downside, perhaps, to the subway system here that could be perhaps addressed to further enhance the experience?
I mean, nothing I would say is glaring. I think maybe all of us have had the experience of missing the last train, which, they do end around midnight, 12:30, and then that's kind of compounded by the lack of usually accessible taxis at that hour. So I think, if you miss that last train, you might find yourself on an odyssey to get home sometimes. I think, maybe the most sort of newsy or social issue that we've seen around the subways has been questions of accessibility, and they've been the sites of protests by the sort of disabled community. And really, relatively, I think the Seoul subway system is good in terms of accessibility. I mean, I think there's something like 90% of the stations have elevators, where in New York it's like 30% or something. So, there is some difficulty, I think, that people maybe in wheelchairs have getting on board, or it's a time-consuming process. But it sort of has become maybe more of a center where people can gather and show their issues they have about accessibility in general in Seoul. I mean, I think the bus system is much more difficult. So, there's some questions about, just being open or to disabled or less.
Make it more accessible to them as well.
Yeah.
Thomas, you're from New York City, as you mentioned earlier. Are there a few points perhaps that New York City could take away from the subway system here in Seoul?
I mean, the wish list would just be so
Top 3
lengthy.
on your wish list.
Yeah, I mean, the screen door thing, I think I would love to see. Just almost any changes to the systems, it seems so massive that it's like hard to get anything done. Some parts in New York have improved just recently in terms of now there's kind of contactless pay to use the fares, which didn't exist for a really long time. And the information boards have gotten like a lot better, but still it's a little bit here and there, station by station. So, a widespread information system of when trains are arriving, that's nice. But, if you could have a magic wand and just kind of like scrub the entire system to the cleanliness level of Seoul, that would be fantastic.
Right. Jack, we've dealt with underground travel as well as travel on land. Let's turn to air travel here in the country. Now, Korea's Incheon International Airport, it ranks 4th, according to findings back in 2021, across the world, 4th across the world. Do you believe that Incheon International Airport lives up to this ranking?
Well, up until that ranking, it had rated #1 for 12 years, and I don't know why it got downgraded, because I've been to the 3 airports on top, and it's nonsense. Incheon's definitely better than that. And there's a reason. It's not just, it is very modern and it's fresh, and I love the fact they've filled it up with plants. They've sort of turned it into an inside forest, and it's great for the air and all of those things. But why I love it is because it functions so well. You can land at Incheon. If 7 other planes land at the same time and there's 600 people all queuing up at customs, you'll be through in about 10 minutes. And when you get down the other end, your bags will be waiting for you. Any other airport in the world, this isn't going to happen. This is why I love it so much. Last year I was at another regional airport, more modern, more fancy. Same thing, lots of planes landed at the same time, but there's about 5 people on the customs desk. And then when you go through, I had to get a transit visa to transit out to the other, which was a bus. I had a 5-hour layover. You'd think I'd be bored. I almost missed my plane. You know, and Incheon really, I can't overstate what a great airport it is. And with the new terminal, I think that's also, you know, I've used it a few times. It's, yeah, I don't throw praise out lightly. I'm often accused of being overcritical, but I really love that airport. And in my job, where I travel all the time, having a good airport like that as a hub is, yeah, it's an absolute blessing.
Right. And Thomas, what can you tell us about some of the activities that are available at the airport for those who have a long layover?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had too long of a layover usually myself in Incheon. I mean, I've seen there are things directly in the airport, like little cultural displays. You know, they have like a traditional music show, and they have like a changing of the guard, where you'll see these sort of palace guards like come marching down the, you know, the terminal. There are, you know, obviously shopping and things like that. You know, one thing that does seem convenient, and obviously you need to have visa-free access for this, but they do make it easy for people to, if you do have a long layover, to take tours into Seoul or the surrounding areas, and you know they're free, like offered by the you know, city or the airport commission. I'm not sure who offers it actually. You know, and I'm not sure the status of those now or during the whole COVID period, but you know, as the kind of thing you could get a tour into highlights of Seoul, and you know, if you do get out of the airport, there is stuff very nearby. There's like a golf driving range and putting area. There's supposed to be an ice rink as well for skating, which I haven't seen. So, you know, there are definitely a handful of things to do. And I would also just second what Jack was saying as a comment about just how convenient of an airport it is. I mean, that's another thing when I go home to New York, say, it's, you know, I see the contrast in the subway, and I really see the contrast in flying into, you know, like a JFK, just the, you know, it's a world of difference as far as like convenience, getting your bag, that kind of thing. So.
Right. So, Jack, it's been said then, it is a great airport. And that being said, do you suppose there are other things, perhaps one or two, that could be done to enhance it?
For me, not really. I think an airport really is a window, a view into the country that you're entering into. So when you land at the airport, you can normally look around and get a fair idea of how does this country function? How does it work? Is it efficient? Is it... And you get a real sense of that. I honestly can't think of a single thing. I even like going out, there's another thing I like out there, is driving out to the park in front of the airport, where you can actually have the planes whiz over you. You know, they let you go to the end of the runway, so you can see the planes coming over there. So I did take my brother out there. No, it's good food, it's great service. I can't think of, I wish I could, but I can't.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words. All right, Jack, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. And Thomas, it's been great having you here.
Thank you.
Right, well, that ends this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow. That is Thursday.